Dear parents, welcome to yet another episode of Dear Parents. Thanks a lot for all the love, comments, suggestions, and most importantly, the questions you have been posting to us. In today's episode also, we'll be taking some very critical questions we have been receiving from you and going more deep into them. So let's start. Hey Cyril, can we have the question for the day?
Rajat is my son in 11th grade. He is in JEE coaching with Vedantu. His attention span is very less and it is difficult to get him to focus on one task in general. When it comes to studies, it becomes a huge challenge for him to pay attention. He drifts off too often and I am worried that this will hold him back. He has told me that paying attention to an entire session in one go is very difficult for him. Do you think his lack of attention is a matter of interest, and can I do anything to help him increase his focus levels? This question was from Leela Anshuman.
Thanks, Leela. Always a pleasure to get questions from Vedantu parents. I think this focus thing is a challenge not just for students preparing for competitive exams, but across the board. But since Rajat is in 11th grade and preparing for JEE exam, focus becomes paramount and is very important. And let me tell you why, and for also the other parents who are watching this. JEE prep, and also to a huge extent NEET prep and all these competitive examination preparations, the final exam is for a long duration, right? It's 3 hours, 20 minutes, in cases, wherein the child needs to be focused and it is prime level of attention for the entire duration of 3 hours, if not more than that. So, एकदम से examination hall के अंदर ये focus नहीं आ जाता है, right? For a child to be having that peak mental performance, even at that time, he or she need to practice that. So, इसलिए focus becomes very important, and focus becomes an important criteria to practice not just in the examination but also in everyday things, be it the study time which the child is doing, be it even the classes which the child is going to, in सब में focus हमें practice करना है. So yeah, I mean the short answer to it is focus important? Yes, it is very important. It won't come just in the examination hall. For the child to be able to focus well, he or she needs to practice that, or a practice begins early on. So even small things to big things, we need to ensure whether the child is developing that muscle of focus. And there are certain ways which you can definitely develop that muscle of focus. It's like any other muscle. You need to work on it. You need to practice. You need to be at it, and you will get better at it. Yeah. So what works? There are a lot of things which works on focus. It's a generic topic, so I'll not go into the academic depth of it and talk about all the stuff which can help you improve the focus. But let me tell you and share with you some of the top level items which I've seen working great with my students and students who are preparing for these competitive exams. Two parts to it. First part is the environment part of it. So पहली चीज तो I would suggest that as a parent you need to ensure that you have a distraction free environment for study for your kid, because if there are so many triggers of some mobile कहीं बज रहा है, some TV कहीं पर है, कहीं पर कुछ आवाज आ रही है, so those triggers are anyways going to distract the child and make him lose focus. So the first and foremost thing which I would advise to all the parents is a simple thing, right? Ensure that there is an environment which is distraction free, which is digitally free, no mobiles, nothing, and there is that environment at home or some place where the child can park himself or herself and do this. So that's point number one, the environment part. The second part is to do with the routine or the schedule part of it. Again, this is something which you can improve through practice. Initially, what I have seen students who study JEE or NEET and have just graduated from the 10th standard to 11th standard face a huge problem in focusing for a longer period of time. Yeah. So I would suggest that you start with 1 hour, okay, or maybe 45 minutes also is fine, and ensure that the child is doing uninterrupted, elongated time of study for that 45 minutes period or 1 hour period, and then after that there is a break. Okay, so this pattern needs to be established, and create this pattern, ensure that this pattern is established, give the break to the child after that 1 hour or 45 minutes, and ensure that there is some stability to this pattern. Just like how we do exercise, first we start with 1 kg, then we go to 5 kg, then we go to 10 kg. यहाँ भी same तरीके से काम करना है. So start with this 45 minutes or 1 hour, then slowly increase that to say 1 hour, 15 minutes or 1.5 hours, and then increase it to 2 hours. Ultimately, by the time I think the child is in 12th grade or middle of 12th grade, we need to ensure that there are these study schedules जहाँ पर बच्चा 3 घंटे minimum uninterrupted बैठने की habit build कर रहा है. Okay, that is very, very, very critical. 3 hours. Why 3 hours? Because those exams are for 3 hours, right? So it won't happen in the exam hall. Remember, practice needs to happen. Start at home. So you need to ensure that this happens. And if the child is able to breach this 3-hour mark, then it's a great sign. Okay, don't push for 6 hours and 7 hours. Like if it happens, great. But I would not advise for that. 3 to 4 hours uninterrupted, continuous work, and then maybe a break for half an hour is also perfectly fine. Okay, so this is the way. We have 2 strategies. One is environment, and second is the routine through which I have seen that muscle getting strong. There are other things, like obviously there are mindfulness techniques, and there are a lot of other techniques which can be used to supplement and to enhance this whole thing of focus. That's a separate topic altogether. We can address it separately. But these 2 strategies, environment and routine, is something I have used and I have seen it succeed. So try doing this, see if it helps, and let us know in the comment section. Thank you. Yes, Cyril. Can we have the other question for the day?
Hi Vamsi, as a teacher I'm sure you have seen many students struggle with some formats of learning and studying. Could you tell us more about different study techniques and which of them work better for each type of student? I remember visualization and mnemonic devices helped me memorize and understand concepts when I was a child. I have also tried the Pomodoro technique with my children and it has been helpful in keeping them focused. Please share some more study techniques that we can experiment with so that we can make the most of our study time. This question was from Aradhya P.
Thank you, Aradhya, for writing to us. The topic of study techniques and different strategies of studying is being documented and written and researched a lot on. And I'm very sure as parents you would have searched on internet, Google, and you would get a huge lamba list of like various study techniques and various ways in which you can study and learn. See, one of the challenges with that is, as parents, since we have so much exposure to all this information, sometimes we actually go to our child and start drilling some of these onto the child. And this is one of the prime reasons when I counsel students and parents. From students' point of view, this comes out as one of the big complaints that my mother or my father is telling me कि बेटा तुम ऐसे पढ़ो, but मुझे ऐसे नहीं पढ़ना है. And believe me, I'm sure many of you would have faced the same thing कि बच्चा सुनता नहीं है. I'm telling the child कि सुबह उठ के पढ़ना, the child doesn't do it. I tell the child कि copy खोल के read it aloud, but the child doesn't do it. I'm very sure a lot of you have this experiences, right? So my dear parents, let me tell you and assure you that there isn't any one technique which is more effective or less effective. Yeah, all the techniques out there have some effectiveness depending on many things. The many things are so many that this video would be short for me to cover all of that. Maybe it's a marker for me to create a separate video just on this topic. But for today, let me address one of the primary things which I have seen being very effective in addressing this problem. And then we can talk about the larger gamut of study techniques maybe in a separate video altogether. So coming back to this particular point, for me, what has worked the best is not to impose a study pattern or a type of study on a child, but before that, trying to understand how does your child study more effectively, or to better put it, what is the study pattern or studying style or learning style, as they call it scientifically, learning style of your child. So my first question to all the parents out there is, do you know your child's learning style? And when I ask this question to parents, let me tell you, not even like 1% of them know this. And it's quite a, big deal, because we think as parents, we know our children, but as simple and as basic thing as this, that learning style of a child is not something which many parents are aware about. Yeah. So this, my dear parents, is the number one thing which I'll probably try to cover in today's, this question. And hopefully this will help you take one step towards understanding your child better. So I'll put a link in the description section of this video where you can click it, and it's a small test. You can administer it with your child, which will help you understand in which bucket does your child really fall in. Again, this is one of the models which I've seen very effective. There are many other models also which you can try, but I would suggest this. Okay. So when you do this, and please let me know like how was your experience in the comment section. But when you do this, you'll essentially get an answer which will help you bucket the learning style of your child in one of the 4 buckets. Again, it's not set in stone. Some of the children have maybe learning styles coming from 2 buckets. That's also perfectly fine. You'll understand it through this test. So the 4 styles or the 4 buckets of learning styles are, the first one is what we call as visual learners, right? And I'll talk about that in greater detail, like if your child is a visual learner, what to do. But these are the kids who love visual stuff. So these are the children who like to learn a concept when it is presented to them in a visual way, which is diagrams, animations, and stuff like that. Okay. So if your child is a visual learner, then there is a particular kind of content or material which would be more suitable for your children, or if you present that, your child will be able to grasp the concept better. That's what it means. So the visual is one bucket. The second bucket is what we call as auditory. Auditory means learning by hearing. So these are the kind of kids who learn very well, who grasp a concept very well if someone is talking it to them, or narrating to them. So these are the kids who do very well in schools when the ma'am is or the sir is teaching, and they learn through that. अगर उनको बोले खुद से पढ़ना है, मतलब if you just give them a book and say that ये खुद से पढ़ो, they are not very effective in that. But if you make them sit in a class, and if someone good teacher is actually teaching, like literally, बात करते हुए, बोलते हुए, they are teaching, they really learn it well. So if your child falls into this bucket, then you need to understand that this is probably what is effective way of learning. But I understand, अब घर पे तो teacher नहीं है. So what you can do is some techniques around opening up a book, reading out loud is definitely a technique which works for these kind of things. Podcasts are some of the ways in which works for these kind of things. Okay, so that's the second bucket. The third bucket we have is, I have very names for it, but reading and writing is is a common name around it. So these are the kids who, like in our school system, these are the normal kids, because they are the ones who study from book. Okay, so they are the ones who are able to do well if they are reading it from a book, written material, presentations, and so on and so forth. These are also the kids who are able to imbibe a concept well if they are able to take notes. So they are also writing. So reading and writing. So many of the parents I've seen telling the kids, take notes, take notes, take notes. But my dear parents, the technique is not applicable for everyone. So only if your child falls under this bucket, that technique will be really helpful, right? But not for others, right? So this is the third one, reading and writing. And the fourth is what we call as kinesthetic. This one is a bucket wherein the kids learn best by doing stuff hands-on. So this is something like a more practical hands-on stuff. So for example, the ones who learn through experiments. Okay, if you need to teach them photosynthesis, you actually need to take them to a park and show them a flower or a leaf and demonstrate through that. So these are the kids who really love by physical objects, interaction, doing stuff, their own labs, and so on and so forth. So they are the 4 buckets, again summarizing these: visual, auditory, reading, writing, and kinesthetic. There are many other sub buckets, not going into depth of it. So if you are interested to know your child lies under which bucket or buckets, there is this test. You can Google it also, or I have left a left a description link. You can click on it and you can administer this test. Please let me know whether this helps you or not. And depending on which bucket the child is, I'm sure as parents, you will be able to better understand and administer the kind of then the material or the teaching techniques which will be most suitable for your child. Hope that helps. Let me know if you have implemented it and if you're seeing some positive result out of it. Right? Let me know in the comment section. Thank you, parents. All right, Cyril, let's move on to the next question.
I am very worried about my daughter's sleeping habits. She's not getting the bare minimum 6 hours of sleep, and she seems adamant on staying up all night and sleeping during the day. She tells me that she is more productive during the night, but she does not sleep enough. After school, coaching, and extracurriculars, she sleeps for only 3 hours every day. Even when she has no studying to do, she still stays up all night watching TV or texting her friends. What sleep routine would you recommend for a 17-year-old child? This question was by Ramsi.
Thank you, Ramsi, for posting that question. It's a wonderful question. Thanks for posting this on behalf of all the parents, because this is one thing which I would love for all the parents to really listen to, pay attention to, and really implement. First and foremost, I would like to correct a small thing. You mentioned in your question that my child is not able to do the minimum 6 hours. I don't think 6 hours is the minimum. It should at least be 7 hours, if not 7.5 hours for kids below 18 years of age. I would essentially recommend 8 hours so that they can have a peaceful 7.5 hours of real sleep, because at least 30 minutes goes in getting into the sleep zone. Yeah. Nowadays it's better because you have all the gizmos, smartwatches, so you can track the sleep properly. So thanks to technology, we have those tools available to us. But I think the ground thumb rule is you have to get minimum 7 hours of sleep done. If that's not happening, deprioritize everything else, because anything and everything you are doing, if you are not having a 7 hours of sleep, that's not going into your head, you are not retaining it, you will not be able to reproduce it, right? So I don't want to bore you with all the biological details about like how does the brain work, why is sleep important. I'm sure many of you are doctors, you would know that, but let me just simply put it in this way. Any information you consume needs to be absorbed, then there are some neuron connections which gets made, so there is that retention, and the effectiveness of that connection helps you recall that information at will. All these things are important for learning and retention and then retrieval to happen. And there are a lot of techniques which you can do to improve retrieval or improve memory retention. And we have spoken about that in some of our previous videos. But in today's this question, the most important underlying basic thing behind all of this, which will help with all those techniques, is sleep. So hence, I can't underscore the importance of minimum 7 hours of sleep. Now, the second thing which I get a lot from parents is, sir, when should my child sleep? Should it be, should she get up early in the morning, or should he, do more late nights, or so? But frankly speaking, all that doesn't matter, right? I have seen students who have secured single digit ranks in JEE or NEET who were night owls, that they used to study in the night. And with the same frequency, I also have students who have done great and who are the early morning risers. So very honestly, there is nothing in my experience which I have seen pointing towards that it's important to get up early and do that early morning hour study, or vice versa. Anything and everything goes. But the most important common denominator is कि मिनिमम 7 घंटे की स्लीप जरूरी है, राइट? अब वो आप 9 बजे सो जाओ और जल्दी उठो, या आप 3 बजे सो सुबह के और लेट उठो, doesn't matter. You need to have 7 hours of sleep. Okay guys, so that is most important. Now, since we are on this topic, let me also add few more things which are important for parents. You need to sync up with the examination time. And it has nothing to do with the minimum hours of sleep, but it has to do with your peak mental attention span. What it means is that if you have an exam coming up at 9 a.m. in the morning to 12 noon, let's say that's your exam and you know that this is the time, तो आपको अपना sleep pattern इस तरीके से govern करना है that you are most active during this 9 to 12. What it means is कि let's say there is a child and who is getting like good 7-8 hours of sleep, but he sleeps at 3 a.m. and gets up at 9, or even 10 a.m. That is not something which I would advise if the child has to take an exam from 9 a.m. to 12 noon, because he will still feel sleepy, not at a peak attention span. Similarly, there are many kids who have a habit of sleeping in the afternoon, short nap, 2 घंटे का, 3 घंटे का. But if their exams is happening from let's say 3 p.m. to like 6 p.m. and you have a habit of like going to a sleep for a short nap at 3 p.m. that's not going to serve you well, right? तो ये बहुत important है, बहुत ज़्यादा important है कि आप regulate करो अपने sleep को and create it in a way that your peak mental performance is happening during this, exam time. I would advise, especially in 12th standard, you should start doing this. 11th तक ठीक है, चलता है. Just ensure that you are getting minimum 7 hours of sleep, if not more. 12th में, I would say at least 6 months before the exam, parents, very, very, very critical and important. You need to like literally impose this, that you have to create a schedule so that उठना बैठना इस हिसाब से है कि जो एग्जाम टाइम है उसमें पीक मेंटल परफॉर्मेंस आ रही है, right? And you can do this by also having a lot of mock tests at home, right? Obviously, you will give mock tests. So this is the way you need to regulate this and do this. Hope this is helpful, and let me know if some of you are able to do this. If there are any other strategies which you are able to follow in order to make your child do this, share with us. Like we'll transmit that to the entire community, and other parents can also benefit from it. Thank you. So, dear parents, that's all for today's episode of Dear Parents. As always, please keep your suggestions, comments, love, and questions coming. So, until next time, please take care. This is Vamsi signing off.